All right, guys. Oh, too close, social distance. All right, guys, so I am back in the United States. I was really hesitant about making this video since my channel is about drones, and I've been trying to make more videos, but I've been feeling sick since I've been back for almost 2 weeks now. And hopefully it's not coronavirus. So today I'm gonna share my story, how I got back to the United States, traveling from Indonesia, what went down, and sort of give you my take on it. So I made a video about how I was stranded in Bali. Basically, I was looking for a ticket, but the US Embassy didn't help me out in Bali. So then I reached out to another embassy, US Embassy in Surabaya, I forgot the pronunciation. And I wrote to them, they wrote me back, and they gave me a list of 2 different airlines to go back to the US. So I chose Qatar Airways because it had the best safety record. Plus it was going through Qatar to the US rather than going through Tokyo. I didn't really want to go through Japan because a few weeks ago, I don't know how it is exactly now, but a few weeks ago in Japan had sort of had a lot of coronavirus cases. So I was a bit hesitant of going that way. So I went through Qatar. So I knew I might return back to the US. So the last couple weeks, I was really pushing it hard, going out every day, flying my drone, getting as much shooting as I could. And it was great because there was hardly any tourists in Bali. There's also a very low number of coronavirus counts. I think it was only 6 people had the coronavirus when I left. So I was able to go out, get some great shots, and live my life freely. The weather was great. Everything was great towards the end of my trip. The beginning, it was kind of rainy. I didn't get to shoot as much. So everything started getting better, less crowds, more shooting, better weather, etc. So I was really hesitant about leaving. I'm like, man, I gotta go back to the US, it's cold. But I figured the coronavirus numbers would increase eventually in Bali. And if it started spreading really fast, I was worried about being on that island since they really don't have the medical supplies and so forth. Not that the US does, but I think it would be better if I was back in my home country if that happens. So it's Thursday night in Bali, got all my stuff ready. All right, 5 more minutes. I'm leaving Bali, going to the airport. It's nighttime right now, and have my carry-on right there. Have my other carry-on right there. Have these 2 batteries that I actually rented, Mavic 2 batteries in the floor that I have to return on the way to the airport. Got my gloves. That's my check bag, my other check bag, and then my computer I'm also gonna carry on. So hopefully everything will go well. I'm a little nervous because everything I've heard on the news seems to be bad in the US, but it's okay here in Bali, but don't wanna be stranded here, so that's why it's time to go. So let's go. Then I took a cab, drove to the airport, dropped off my drone batteries, ended up getting a few more Mavic 2 Pro batteries, which I actually rented on the island, and went to the airport. And when I got to the airport, it was basically completely empty, at least in the part where I was. As you can see, the Bali airport is just completely empty. No one's here. And I got all my stuff right there. You can see, got the gloves on. Also, for flight information right here, all the flight information says no operate. So hopefully my plane is operating. In the Bali airport, you couldn't sit right next to a person. So they had the seats marked off. So every other seat you couldn't sit. That way people were social distancing. I didn't even sit down. I just stood for like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It was pretty crazy. And I thought to myself, it's better just stand and not take any risks. So I took as much precaution the entire flight, the entire way back as possible, which is why my story is pretty crazy. So keep in mind, I was about to start a 50+ hour journey, and I ended up being awake for more than 3 days straight. So I knew it was gonna be really rough in the beginning, so I was mentally prepared for it, but you're never really 100% prepared until you do it. So before I went through the baggage check, they took my temperature along with everyone else, which I thought was really good. And it was the only place I ever had my temperature taken or anything asked about my health. And then, so I got in the plane, and I would say maybe 20% of the people had masks or gloves on. The plane was about half full, so it wasn't a huge deal, but it kind of made me think, what's wrong with people? So people sort of had a cavalier attitude in Bali. So most tourists just had their shorts, t-shirts, no gloves, just walking around like everything is perfectly fine. So that's the way the situation was on that first plane flight. So the first plane flight was about 9-10 hours, and I got to Qatar. and I landed in Doha airport. So the airport in Qatar in Doha was a humongous airport, very extravagant, and you could say it was pretty empty, but there still was a significant number of people. And it was actually the only time I've ever been to an airport where I only saw one airline. So it was only Qatar Airways. There were no other planes on the runway. And Qatar Airways has maintained the same number of flights. I think they might have even increased it during the coronavirus pandemic. So everything has pretty much remained the same for them. So that was the main airline, which is why it was a big hub. So I was there with all people coming from all over the world. Like the person next to me on the next flight was from Singapore, and they were from all over. So I was flying back to Chicago. Now the reason I chose Chicago rather than New York was because New York is the epicenter of the coronavirus. So I thought if I go to Chicago, I know it's gonna be a huge pain, but I can deal with that as long as I don't get coronavirus. That was my main concerns. So in the Qatar airport, I was delayed for about 6 hours, tried to do some work, tried to stay away from people, and I didn't eat or drink anything on the plane because I don't want to take a risk. I left my mask and my gloves on the entire time. So in the airport is when I ate and drank. I had some cookies and some like granola bars and things like this and some water. And that's what I did. So it was a really grueling trip because I don't sleep on planes. I just, for some reason, I can't do it. So I rested my eyes and maybe just sat there with my eyes closed for like an hour or two. But I never was able to fall asleep. And so traveling this far with not eating right, not sleeping right, it was a bit difficult. So I got on the plane, and when I got on the plane, they checked my passport and my ticket 7 times, but they didn't ask about my temperature, about how I felt, nothing like this. So it was kind of shocking. I got in the plane and more people had face masks and gloves. I say about 50%, but even some flight attendants didn't have it, and that kind of surprised me. And then people would just take it off for a while and talk to their friend or eat and drink. So I thought, what's the point of having the face mask if you take it off, right? So there was a person in front of me who was they put their seat back the entire flight. So for 14 hours, I had someone about a foot away from me. Then I had a person 2 feet away from me, and then another person, I was in the aisle seat right next to me, and then I had a person behind me. So I had people all around me. So there was no kind of social distancing on the plane. The plane was probably 2/3 to 3/4 full. And I'd say, yeah, maybe like 50% of people had masks and gloves on. But like I said, they were taking it off. So I was probably in a high risk area. Then I got to Chicago. When I landed in Chicago, this is the biggest shock of all, going through customs and going to the US. I thought I might be quarantined, or they'd take my temperature, do some tests, have doctors there, etc. At least ask me some questions, but they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything to me or any of the other passengers. All they did was ask whether I bought something and then just stamp my passport, let me through, and that was it. So they did that with everyone, just letting them through. I was kind of shocked that they're just letting people in, and I could have had a fever, they would have never known. So that was a bit shocking. So I got my stuff and went to the rental car place, and the whole airport is basically empty. The rental car place, I didn't see one other person. There was 2 workers there, but that's about it. And then I rented a car, got in, and drove. So that was about 8 p.m. when I started driving. And it was about 16 hours. So I arrived in Connecticut around 12:30 at the rental car place. I know it sounds crazy, but the rental car place Hertz, they were closing at 1 p.m. So I wanted to make it before 1 p.m. because I didn't want to be charged another day. And also, I couldn't stay at my mom's house or my dad's house or anyone else. I didn't want to stay with them because obviously I was at risk. I had to be quarantined. And then I didn't want to stay in a hotel. So that's why I drove, because I didn't want to risk getting the coronavirus. So I didn't want to stay near anyone. So that's why I just kept going. All right, guys, just drove from Chicago here to Connecticut. I think I have something in my eye right now. And yeah, like 45 hours later, here we are. I'm at Hertz. At the Hertz place here in Connecticut. So I dropped my rental car off, and my mom has another car that she doesn't use, so I used that car and I drove to Vermont. Alrighty, so I'm on the final stretch here, going to Vermont now to quarantine myself. Just stopped at my mom's house, had something to eat. It was weird though, I couldn't hug my mom, or my brother was there, or anybody. I couldn't hug, the rest of my family was there. A lot of my family was there, but I couldn't hug them. Had to keep at least 6 feet away, so it's a bit strange, a bit odd, and I'm just leaving the mask on and driving up to Vermont now. And there's a few cars on the road, but it's not a lot. So I'm in this house right now in Vermont, basically quarantining, getting away from everybody. And by the time I unpacked all my stuff and went to bed, I calculated it. It was probably around 3 days that I had been up, because I had been up the previous day before I left, because I was out shooting, doing some things, packing, etc. So I didn't really sleep for like 3 days, and the next day I definitely felt it. Now, when I got back, I also tried to wipe everything down, or as much stuff as I could, and unpack some of the most important things. And that's actually why I have this thing right here. They call it a magic wand, and it's by this company called Verilux. I'll put a description below. But this thing came in handy with the coronavirus, and definitely for traveling. I brought it initially just to stop bed bugs and things like that. You just press one button and you turn it on, and it has this UVC light. So basically you just hold it over something. Like if I had this pen right here, I just put the pen down, and if that had some type of virus or disease, I would just go over this nice and slowly and nice and close, and that would kill the virus or disease. Now it's supposed to kill, I think, 99.99%. It kills bed bugs and things like that. That's why I brought it, because I thought I'm gonna be away for a while. I don't wanna get bed bugs and things like that. I ended up using it for potential coronavirus, and I've been using it ever since. So I'll put a link to that down below. I kind of stumbled upon it because my mom recommended it, and she's been using it with all her mail that she gets. So you don't have to wipe things down and keep everything, you know, the way it is, but you just have to, you just scan, kind of wave this magic wand, and it kills everything, including the coronavirus. So it's real handy, and that's what I've been using, and hopefully I don't have it. So that's why I thought I'd share it with you. I know it's not a typical drone thing, but it might come in handy right now for anyone who's interested. So now the next day I wake up and I felt awful. I mean, I probably slept 14, 15 hours. So now for the past 10 days, even the past 2 weeks, I've been feeling cold, sort of have the chills, feeling achy. And overall, I've just been feeling really bad. I've been sleeping so much. I've been sleeping 12 to 15 hours every single night. I go to bed usually around 5:30. 6 o'clock. Actually, it's almost my bedtime now. And then I'll wake up the next day at like 7 or 8, and I'll be like, I just slept like 14 hours. What the heck? How did I do that? So I've been doing that every day. I've been feeling okay, been feeling a little better, but I've still been really tired and sleeping a lot. Hopefully I don't have coronavirus, but that, you know, it might have been just, I think it was just overdoing it. Also, I went from a tropical climate to Vermont, and it's been snowing off and on since I got here. So that definitely could have done it. I know I tend to get sick when the weather is cold. Every winter, if I'm in a cold place, I get sick, especially if I'm run down. So that's my story. My main concern for this whole trip was that the US government wasn't taking any precautions with the people coming into the US. So people are just coming into the US, they're not being checked, they're not being quarantined, nothing's happening. They're not even asking them whether they have a fever or not, whether they're sick, they're not taking their temperature. For me, it's kind of shocking. I thought, being the US government, that they would do that, when in other countries, like in Bali and Indonesia, they're doing it. In the US, they're not. So that was kind of shocking to me. But that's it. I just want to share my story with you. Like, comment, subscribe, maybe share a story with the coronavirus. Maybe you have an interesting one, share it below. When I get back to a normal sleep pattern, I will start making more videos. I apologize about that, but I will start making more drone videos for all the people that are watching that are drone enthusiasts. And that's it. See you in the next video.